How is a mantilla veil easy to make? Well, I'm going to show you how to make this veil from start to finish with beautiful lace and netting. So stay tuned to the end and I'm going to show you the bride who wore this beautiful veil. All your supplies are going to be in the description below, and there's really not a lot of supplies. It's just your time and imagination, lace and net. My bolt is illusion netting in a 72-inch width. Now my bride, I measured her with heels on. So I know that with heels on, she is 68 inches from the top of her placement down to the floor and then out 17 inches. So her total veil will be 85 inches. And that's what we're going to cut first. So I'm going to cut the length first and then we're going to round off the edges. Pretty simple. And I do like to cut just a smidge more. I'm going to cut here at the 85, but I'm going to go to 86 with a rotary cutter and a yardstick. This is how I cut my netting. I do not use scissors. It gives you a nice clean edge like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the corners and we're going to match those because we're going to curve them here in a second. Again, flicking like a sheet works like magic, I'm going to tell you. And then you're going to match the corner of the bottom, and there's both corners of the veil. And now what you're going to do is you're going to match up these corners as best as you can. This is probably the most confusing part of cutting a mantilla veil since it is one of the most advanced cuts. Watch what happens when I do a little flick. And then I'm going to flick them. And they start to line up. Don't give up. Illusion netting is not going to win the day on this one. Again, I'm going to flick. See, we almost lined up perfectly there. Going to be as good as we get it. All right, to hold that in place, I'm going to put some weights. That way that netting won't move anymore. Essentially what I'm doing is a nice curve. Here's the center of the veil here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically draw a line in my mind and I'm going to curve that off. I don't want this kind of a curve. What I'm going to do is curve this, holding it as I'm going. So I didn't do more of a bubble, but a nice soft oval curve. So I'm going to go and iron this out. I will probably have to iron it again after my work because I'll be doing a lot of handwork on it. I'll see you back here in just a moment. One thing I did want to show you is how I pin the netting when I'm going around the edge. I actually lay it flat. Always flat. I pin the top of the scallop, the sides of the scallop, and I make sure before doing that it's flat. What we don't want is a bunch of puckering. What we're wanting it is to be nice and flat. And as you're coming around the curve, what will eventually happen as you hit a curve, which I have hit right here, is this center will start to bubble out. And I'll show you what I mean here. Pin this down here at the bottom. Now, essentially what's happening is this is a rounded object. And so this right here, because there's too much tension, is going to bubble up. I'm going to cut right into that lace and I'm going to overlap. Backwards cutting here. Be careful not to cut the netting of your veil. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this up and I'm going to overlap it, laying that down flat, and that will take care of that little pucker around that curve. And to note that, I put a couple of pins in there because I will have to do a little bit more sewing around that area there. That way that'll give me a notation that I actually did a little overlap. All right, we're on the straightaway here. I think you get the idea. And the key is that this lace is laying flat before I put it under the sewing machine. All right, happy pinning. It's a labor of love. Reach the end of the scallop and I think we've matched up really well. I want to kind of bring this up to you so you can see here's a little piece that I've overlapped, and I showed you how to overlap over there. And now we've reached a spot where we meet, but we don't meet perfectly. And that's okay. Almost close to the scallop length that we're going to fake the eye. I'm going to do that pretty simply by cutting this lace. And if you know me, I am not afraid to cut lace. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to line up the scallop down here, which means I'm going to cut about right here. That's about where I'm going to cut. And then I'm just going to kind of cut around and remove this part for now. Kind of see how that looks. I'm going to pin this overlap right here. Since we know this is where we're overlapping, and that's a perfect little overlap right there. I'm going to also pin down below our scallop. And now I can see the scallop is very close to similar. Obviously, if you looked really close, you're going to see the differences, but we're going to fake the eye a little bit even more. So we're going to make this look like this scallop connects to that scallop, and I'm going to do that by cutting right here. As you can see now, that scallop lines up. You see that's enough of a similar overlap that I can fake the eye really well there. Essentially what we're doing is we're doing a cut lace application on the back here. We're cutting the lace so that it lines up, and I'm going to go ahead and chip away at it. And I think that's a good lineup. All right, I'm cutting this little piece right here off, and now I'm going to pull that over. It's a bit of a finessing. Take your time. There's no exact way I can tell you to do this because of the fact that it's lace, and every lace is going to be different. You're just going to try to find the best path to making yours line up. Once I have it lined up, I'm going to pin that real well. See how that's lining up? And we're going to overlap. I'm going to pin this right here. What we want to be mindful of is any puckering. You see how I'm basically just kind of making it look like it all goes together. Just kind of look at the scallops, and I would say that we pretty much have got the eye faked. I think that's as good as it's going to get. So you can see each lace is going to line up differently. Do the best you can, create your own math problem, and then work it out so that the lace matches. That is the most important part when you're doing a circular veil or an oval veil. You want to make sure that your lace lines up at some point. Now, if you can fake the eye, that's even better. All right, now that we have this all done and I feel very, very good about how everything lined up, I'm now going to sew this with a sewing machine. The first thing I'm going to do is sew the edge, and then the second thing I'm going to do is sew around, and then the third thing we're going to do is glue down any of the loose parts. And I'm going to just show you portions of that because I don't have to show you every single scallop and how that works. I'm going to show you one scallop. All right, we'll see at the sewing machine. Now I'm going to just sew this edge here, and I'm just going to do 3-3, and I'm going to go all the way down, lock my stitch, and go straight across. And remember, we put the netting all the way to the edge of this selvage, and when I go through and cut all of this off, that'll be all cleaned up. And I'm just going straight through the scallop all the way around the veil. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of it, but you get the idea. I'm just going round and round and making sure, keeping your netting flat this way and flat this way. It's hard because there's a lot of veil to wrestle around. Go around, holding it and moving it back. All right, well, I will meet you at the other end. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of it. And then I will show you how to sew the scallop. See you at the end. And now we're going to sew the scallop part. So at the same spot that I ended, I'm going to go, here's the cool thing. This is the scallop that we basically cut together, and it's looking so good. It looks just like it was born this way. I'm going to start with that scallop since it had the most need for top stitching. And I'm going to top stitch right about here. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go around the edge of that scallop. And it's going to be a slow moving process, but I'm going to show you how to do one or two of the scallops, and then you can pretty much just go from there. All right, let's dive in. So I'm going to just lock my stitch, and I'm going to move around. Now the key to this will be to keep my netting flat. Do not let any puckering occur. You don't want to be doing this with your netting. You want to actually keep it nice and flat and go around. And as you get to a place where you turn, lift your foot and turn the veil. This is going to take a bit, but once you're done, it'll lay really nice and flat. And remember, this is not a tight pressing, it is a holding, a firm hold. All right, veil makers, you did it. You sewed all of your lace down, and it looks great on my end. I hope it looks good on your end. I didn't get any puckering. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to see how I clean this edge up. I'm going to show you how I do that. And if you remember, I had you go all the way up to the edge with your netting. And the reason I do that is when you have that netting underneath, it's really nice as it slides on the ground a lot easier, or on carpet. It doesn't catch on the lace. Some of these laces are really thick. You can have little pockets on them, so that little barrier of netting helps with that movement. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to cut the little eyelash off and trim it. And if your lace doesn't have that, no worries. What you still want to do, let's pretend this eyelash isn't here. I'm going to pull that off real quick and show you what I'm talking about. So let's say your lace doesn't have that. I'm still going to encourage you to sew your lace all the way to the end. Let me put my glue board here so you can see. This would be what you would be cutting off if you didn't have the eyelashes like I had. You kind of get the idea. This is a very quick job. It doesn't take very long at all. I usually do it on my lap. And now what we're going to do is we're going to lay this back down, and we're going to catch any areas that we missed, and I'm going to show you what we do next. I typically will trim first, then I come back and do this next part. And this part is pretty easy as well, because if you did a really good job catching all the lace, then you won't have a lot of work to do now. But this is your detail work. You're going to take your glue and you're going to find a little spot that didn't get much of a catch. All right. These are actually pretty good. This one's a little bit of a pocket there, or I can put my finger in. I'm going to take a little tiny bead of glue and I'm going to turn over the spot I missed and I'm going to smear it right on the edge. And then I have my glue board here and I'm going to then lay it down. And if you get any glue on your veil or your table, you can use rubbing alcohol with a Q-tip. That works great. All right, and then what I do is I pull that up. Sometimes there'll be little glue tails, so you grab those off, and I will then sew real quick underneath that little spot. And you don't have to do this next step. If you're selling your veils, I recommend that you try to do a little bit of hand sewing on these things, and that's it. That is all secure. Yep, all done. You get the idea. So you're going to go around, you're going to trim it, you're going to glue any of the areas that came up. So there's probably like 2 more hours worth of work to do, and then you'll have a glorious, beautiful mantilla lace veil. Now let's talk about the comb. For a mantilla, I like to use a 3-comb system, and I will show you some other systems you can use as well. My 3-comb system goes like this. So I put a 2-inch, a 1-inch, and a 1-inch, and I do that so that it's flexible. The reason I do that is if you did like one large 5-inch, 6-inch, or they have big ones, what inevitably is they'll be kind of too stiff and this will wing out. You do not want this winging out. This is the cap right here. You want this cap to lay on the bride's head. If this is real heavy and it's got lots of beading on it, that helps wonderfully to cap around the head. However, because I don't have that weight, I've got to create a more rounded effect on the head, and you do that with a 3-comb system. And then also too, you don't want to put the comb too close to the edge because you don't want to see the metal. The goal is for it to go down like it is already, so that it naturally goes down. You can take a little bit of the lace and then I can just cover comb right there just to ensure that I don't see any of the metal, and I just glue that on and sew it on. You can also do that with bobby pin loops, and these are button loops, and I turn them around this direction and then you would just place them. This is great for brides who a comb will not fit in their hair. Another option is, you've seen these, they come around, I cut them, and you can put this on there. It just depends on the bride's hair. If she's got really thin hair, this would be great. This is not going to go anywhere. Wasn't that easy? You took lace and netting and you made a veil that can cost you $1,000 or more at a bridal shop. I hope you had a lot of fun making it, and if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I'm here to help. As promised, here's some photos of my bride Keela, who wore this beautiful veil in her destination wedding. And if you want to learn how to make more lace veils, check out this playlist here called Let's Get Lacy, and it shows you all kinds of lace veils. If you love lace, that's the playlist to check out. See you later. Thank you for dropping in. It has been a pleasure.